A bizarre night in 1913. The mystery of the disappearance of Rudolf Diesel. One night, the remarkable destiny of inventor Rudolf Diesel, famous for creating the engine that bears his name, suddenly changed. His unexplained disappearance on September 29, 1913, gave rise to a mystery as enduring as the legacy of his extraordinary engineering achievements. A successful career and a disappearance without a trace. Rudolf Diesel worked as an engineer, developing many devices, from refrigerators to steam engines. The inventor applied for a patent for his revolutionary engine in 1892. In the years that followed, the diesel engine became a staple of industry in general and the car building industry in particular. So all the signs were that Rudolf Diesel would have a quiet life without financial problems. Then, one night in 1913, while crossing the English Channel aboard the SS Dresden, Rudolf Diesel disappeared without a trace. On September 29, 1913, Rudolf Diesel boarded the ship going from Antwerp to London. Witnesses at the time said he had dinner on board and retired to his cabin around 10 p.m. He asked to be woken up at 6:15 a.m. But, the next day, Diesel's bed was undisturbed and his pajamas untouched. Many theories, nothing concrete. Official reports concluded that Diesel perished that night. Some say he fell overboard after going out for a walk during the night. Rudolf Diesel was known to be an insomniac. But still, even if Diesel had gone out on deck during an episode of insomnia, that night the sea had not been rough and there had been no storms that could have caused him to fall off the deck. The most common version of events says that the 55-year-old jumped into the sea because he had health problems and to escape his mounting debts. But there are other theories. The diesel engine was instrumental in the development of German submarines, which played an important role in the First and Second World Wars. Some believe that German agents infiltrated the ship and killed him so that Rudolf Diesel could not give his invention to the British. Financial issues? There are also several accounts as to what happened after Diesel's disappearance. Even the newspapers of the time did not seem to be certain of the facts related to the death of the inventor and his material situation. Only a few weeks apart, the New York Times published two completely different stories. The title of the first one was "German Inventor Was a Millionaire and Happily Married." Instead, another article carried the headline, "Diesel Family Straightened." It seems that the missing inventor has left his descendants in a very bad financial situation. The Diesel family had become quite wealthy from Rudolf's patented inventions. However, it seems that the inventor was much better at engineering than managing money. Some accounts suggest that Rudolf Diesel was heavily in debt before he disappeared. That's why some researchers believe that its disappearance hides much more than one might suspect at first glance. The body of Rudolf Diesel, not to be found. Adding to the mystery is the fact that Rudolf Diesel's lifeless body was never recovered. But there are two accounts that could clarify what happened to his body. 10 days after the disappearance, the crew of a Dutch vessel fished a man's body off the coast of Norway. The remains were too decomposed to be identified, but the Dutch kept the objects found on the body. Diesel's son later said that these objects had indeed belonged to the inventor. On October 14, 1913, a new account of Diesel's possible body appeared. A lifeless body was found at the mouth of the Scheldt River, but according to the lineup, the person who spotted it left it in the water due to the stormy weather. In addition to the missing body, there were other strange circumstances surrounding Diesel's disappearance that led to speculation about his death. Did Rudolf Diesel fake his death? According to Greg Paul, author of Biodiesel, Developing a New Economic Energy, shortly before leaving for the trip, Diesel allegedly gave his wife a bag, telling her not to open it until the following week. In the bag were financial documents relating to the inventor's debts, as well as a substantial sum in German marks. Perhaps even more revealing is the fact that Diesel drew a small cross in his diary next to the date of the disappearance. It is not known if this indicates that he wanted to end his life or that he knew he would be killed. Perhaps it is a completely different meaning, but we may never know. These bizarre accounts, combined with other facts, have led some to hypothesize that Diesel did not commit suicide, nor was he murdered. Instead, he allegedly staged his own death and then went into hiding. In fact, in the spring of 1914, even the New York Times reported that there were rumors, later proven unfounded, that the inventor was alive and in Canada. We will probably never know the whole truth, taking into account, first of all, the long interval that has passed since the disappearance of the great inventor. Missing Squadron, the unknown fate of the Flight 19 pilots. On December 5, 1945, shortly after 1400 hours, a formation of 5 TBM Avenger military aircraft, with 14 airmen on board, took off from the military base in Fort Lauderdale, USA, on a training mission. The planes had enough fuel and their technical condition was good. The squadron leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, was an experienced pilot. No one had any reason to believe that the flight was going to be anything other than a routine exercise. But the 5 planes and their pilots were to become the protagonists of one of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century. I don't know where we are. At 1540, after about 90 minutes of flight, the training was almost over. But just as the planes turned to return to base, something terrible happened. On the ground, Robert Cox, a flight instructor, was adjusting his radio when he received a strange message transmitted between the planes taking part in Flight 19, as the exercise was called. Cox heard one of the captains, Edward Powers, say in a puzzled tone, "I don't know where we are. We probably got lost after the last turn." Much later, at about 6:20 p.m., there was a screeching sound, and then 2 more lines from the pilots. "Everything looks strange, even the ocean," said one of the captains. "We are completely lost," said another pilot. After this last transmission, there was silence. The 5 planes of Flight 19 and the airmen on board disappeared without a trace and were never seen again. What exactly had happened during Flight 19? It didn't take long for conspiracy theories to appear in the press. The fact that the disappearance occurred in the Bermuda Triangle, where numerous other aircraft and ships had previously disappeared, fueled the feeling that the planes had been hijacked by a mysterious force. But the evidence gathered over time seems to point to a more logical, though equally unsettling, explanation. Although this has never been officially confirmed, it is possible that the extinction occurred due to a combination of nefarious factors. The first thing that could have contributed to the disaster was the weather conditions. Although the sky was clear when the planes took off, the weather deteriorated during the afternoon. Clouds gathering in the sky could have contributed to the disorientation of the pilots. The Bermuda Triangle could also have played a role in this, because in that area of the ocean there are large variations in the Earth's magnetic field, which disrupt navigational equipment. Lieutenant Taylor, who was in command of the squadron, was heard to complain that the compasses on board did not seem to be working properly, so the pilots most likely had to navigate without them. Although the 5 planes of Flight 19 lost contact with the control tower, radio operators on the ground were able to listen to their conversations. They quickly realized that Taylor had gone astray. A third factor that later came to the attention of investigators was the fact that this was Taylor's first flight from Fort Lauderdale. Although a highly experienced pilot, Lieutenant Taylor was unfamiliar with the topography of the area. "I'm sure I'm in the Florida Keys, but I don't know how far down and I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale," he was heard telling his comrades. Investigators later determined that the lieutenant was actually looking toward the Bahamas, not the Florida Keys. Unaware that he had drifted far off course, Taylor made the decision to steer the planes northeast, unaware that they were actually heading out into the open Atlantic Ocean. What happened next is still a mystery today. It was speculated that the pilots had ditched, hoping to keep the planes afloat until rescue ships arrived. But TBM Avenger aircraft sink hard and are even harder to keep afloat, so it is very likely that the planes and pilots would have sunk. Over the next 5 days, the Coast Guard and the U.S. Navy thoroughly inspected 700,000 square kilometers of the Atlantic Ocean, but found no plane debris or any fuel slicks on the surface of the water. The final report of the U.S. Navy Board of Inquiry was inconclusive, and the fate of the pilots will probably never be known.